Good morning, friends. This is my very first offering of content on Pedaling Past 60. Pedaling Past 60 is a channel that I wanted to create for people my age. I am 61 years old, and over the last year, e-biking has been my great passion. I rode in Nebraska through the fall, through the winter, spring, and now summer. It's been life-changing for me, and I thought I want to share the experience with others that I had. Today I'm going to take a look at brakes on my Metro S, which is made by Magnum. It's a large city bike, and I'm a large frame guy, 6 foot, over 200 pounds. I can say how much, but I ride the brakes a lot, and I do not bomb down hills in my city. I ride the brake all the way down. I'm too old to fall, so I take it easy quite a bit. That grinds the brakes a lot. These are cable actuated brakes, not hydraulic brakes, and I'll explain a little bit more about the difference in that later. So the first thing I've done is remove the battery, or I've shown you that I removed the battery, and I have the bike up on a retaining wall as a workbench. Just makes life a little bit easier. And the first thing we're going to do is remove these two bolts that are attached to this bracket that is attached to the bike frame. This caliper squeezes on this rotor and stops the bike. It's not too tricky, but it is sort of tedious. So right here, I have the caliper off the bike. The bolts, I'd like to keep this assembly intact while I'm working. You can see the bolt, and I have a rubber grommet on there to keep this captured. This is the spacer. Then there's some additional spacers of washers on the top and the bottom of the caliper here. That arrangement is critical to the alignment of the disc pads, and we want to keep that all together during this process. On the opposite side of this caliper, you can see this cotter key that's keeping the disc brakes and the disc pads and the springs in place for me. I'm going to pull that cotter pin out and pull the pads to put the camera down so that I can show you that process. Okay, let's get this pin out. Remember that the pin goes in this way. Set that out of the way. And then we're just going to pull this spring and brake shoe out. There's the there it is. The two brake pads and the spring. And I'll show you how those three line up as soon as I wash my hands. I don't want to get any grease on the new pads that would contaminate the rotors. Okay, so here's the assembly before it goes in the caliper. There's a spare spring, got a pad on the bottom, a spring in the middle, and a pad on top. Okay, and there's a hole right here that cotter key goes through that holds it to the caliper. Pretty basic. Okay, before we slide that assembly back in here to the caliper, notice this adjustment device right here. This is what kind of squeezes those shoes or those brake pads in towards the rotor. Before we set the new brake, I'm going to go ahead and back that out with the number 5 hex key, which I've been using for this whole process. Okay, I think you can probably see that backing out, kind of opening the slot up. Okay. All right, so let's grab the pad assembly. So I've got this whole assembly here that I showed you earlier. We're going to just slip it into the caliper. Okay. Okay, finally, we've got the pad, the spring, the pad, and through all three is the cotter key. Well, so I'm just going to have to bend this back over so the assembly doesn't fall out. That's it. Let's get this back on the rotor. Now, before I put this back on the rotor, I'm going to get some alcohol and clean these rotors on both sides. Make sure that there's no grease or anything on there that can contaminate the pads. Okay? Okay, I've got the rotors nice and clean on both sides. An angry dog because there's a cat standing behind me. Now remember, I've got this whole assembly held together with those rubber O-rings. So this is the difficult part to explain. Now that the caliper is on and both the pads are on each side of the rotor, before you tighten, or as you tighten the caliper back down, you have to center up the caliper on the rotor. And it's tricky because on a cable actuated brake caliper, only one side moves. And so since only one side moves, the best way for me to explain it for you on camera is just to use my hands as brake shoes. And imagine that, I guess my face is the rotor. But on a cable actuated brake caliper, one caliper moves in and pushes the rotor into the other pad and slows you down. And as you release, it all relaxes and you can roll smoothly. On a hydraulic actuated caliper, which is a little bit more expensive system, both of the pads squeeze together at the same time on the rotor, right? In and out as you squeeze. So lining up the caliper on a cable actuated means you want to get the stationary side as close to the rotor as you can, so that when you squeeze, it immediately pushes it over to the stationary side. Okay? That's the best way I can explain it. The caliper has some adjustment to move back and forth. You just kind of have to look down in there, line it up, maybe put a flashlight underneath so you can see it a little bit better, and then carefully tighten it. And there's one more adjustment you can make on the stationary side as the brake shoes get worn a little bit. There's another that bolt that I showed you earlier in the caliper. You can just push that shoe in with the bolt. If you tighten it up, it just kind of pushes that brake shoe over towards the rotor for you. Okay? Fiddling with brakes is no fun. If you're a big guy like me, I think you really want to look at a bike with hydraulic actuated pads. And if you're a lightweight person, you're probably not going to have a problem. But remember, if I go 240 and the bike is 65 pounds and the saddlebag weighs another 20 and it's got a 10-pound laptop in it, you've got a lot of a really large dynamic load rolling downhill. And I brake all the way down the hills. Again, I do not like picking up speed. I don't have a need for speed. I don't want to go from my handlebars at the age of 61 years old. Okay? Just can't afford it. I don't have the time. So I just enjoy looking at homes as I go downhill. So I'm going to go make that adjustment right now, and I'll have the camera on. You won't necessarily be able to see exactly what I'm doing, but hopefully the explanation helped. We'll be right back after the neighbor's done mowing. Such is the life of a YouTuber. And so finally, right, we want to push it in by using an Allen key. And we're just going to give it a little turn so it just gets a little bit closer to the rotor. I'm sighting down the rotor. I can just see just a little sliver of light between that. in the shoe. Okay, the final step now is to take it out for a ride and bed those shoes in. We're gonna get up some speed, slam on the brakes 10 times in a row. Okay friends, let's wrap this up. I only did the front wheel on video. The back wheel is much the same. You can take the front wheel off and work on your bike. That's better if you can tip it upside down or put it on a jack stand, like a mechanics repair stand. I just use my retaining wall, and it seems to work out the best for my back. The other thing, of course, and I should have talked about this at the beginning, is safety. If you don't feel comfortable doing something like this, don't try it just to save money. If you have the aptitude and you want to learn your bike, this is the best way to do it. Again, the cable actuated brakes are a little bit harder on the pull. The hydraulic brakes, much better stopping power, and of course, you can just pull those levers with one finger. So the hydraulic brakes are attractive to me, but this is what I have, and this is what I'll be staying with for a little bit, and a new bike will come down the road, but for now this is it. You can order the brake pads online on Amazon or get them from your local bike dealer. They're pretty common, and they're very inexpensive, so it only cost, I think, $16 to $20 to redo the front and rear brakes on the bike. That's pretty great. I've done the brakes now over 2,200 miles. I think this is my third set of pads. And again, I'm a big boy, I ride the brakes. Your mileage may vary. Anyway, until next time, thanks for being with me on this journey, and I'll keep making content. If you're still with me on this video, please gently press the subscribe button. Thank you.